History often unfolds in ways that seem, well, spontaneous, right? A complex tapestry of independent events, unpredictable turns.
Yeah, usually.
But what if one author claimed to uncover a singular hidden force, one that's been uh, orchestrating centuries of global conflicts and revolutions?
It's a huge claim.
It is. And today on the Deep Dive, we're examining exactly that. We're looking at William Guy Carr's provocative 1956 book, Pawns in the Game.
A book that definitely caused some waves, and still does.
Absolutely. So our mission today is really to unpack Carr's, let's be frank, controversial and sweeping narrative.
Sweeping is definitely the word for it.
He contends that a secret power made up of international bankers has systematically manipulated world events, all aiming for ultimate world domination.
Right, and just to be clear up front, we're exploring how he constructs this argument.
Exactly. We're reporting on the content of this source material, definitely not endorsing its viewpoints. It's important to make that distinction. And maybe just a quick note on the author himself. William Guy Carr. He was a high-ranking Canadian naval officer, had military and intelligence connections.
Which he suggests gave him unique insights.
He does. He states his investigations into this international conspiracy took him across the world. And interestingly, Carr mentions something personal. He says he was actually indoctrinated into Bolshevik ideology when he was just 12.
Wow, 12.
Yeah, but he chose to investigate deeply before forming his own conclusions later on.
So he felt he knew it from the inside, in a way.
Seems like it. It's also worth noting Carr died just 4 years after publishing Pawns in the Game. The cause was listed as unexplained causes, and he was 64. Adds another layer, doesn't it?
It certainly adds to the mystique, yeah. And Carr presents this whole thing not just as a theory. He argues it's a documented history.
Right, a continuous, deliberate plot weaving through massive historical events.
Exactly. And he claims this plan wasn't new, even in the 1700s. He says it has ancient roots, but they were significantly modernized in the late 18th century.
Okay, let's unpack that. Carr's central claim, linking all these seemingly disparate events, it's audacious.
It really is.
What's fascinating is where he says it all began. He pinpoints a specific moment, an act of God in 1784, claims it exposed this continuing Luciferian conspiracy.
Indeed. In Carr's telling, this act of God, apparently a courier carrying secret documents, was struck by lightning, revealed the schemes of one Adam Weishaupt.
Weishaupt, a Jesuit-trained professor, right?
Yeah, professor of canon law.
Yeah.
Carr claims Weishaupt defected from Christianity around 1770, embraced Luciferian ideology, and then here's the key part, was allegedly retained by powerful moneylenders.
And he specifically names the House of Rothschild.
He does. He claims they hired Weishaupt to revise and modernize these age-old protocols for what Carr rather dramatically calls the Synagogue of Satan, all aimed at achieving world domination.
So it's like taking an old playbook and updating it for the modern era.
Exactly, like a dangerous operating manual getting a software update for the 18th century, ready for deployment.
So Weishaupt, allegedly backed by this powerful financial group, develops the blueprint. What were the core objectives? What were the methods supposed to be?
Carr states Weishaupt finished this task on May 1st, 1776, a date that obviously has significance.
Way Day,
Right. And then he organized the Illuminati. Carr says the name means holders of the light, deriving it from Lucifer to execute this plot.
And the objectives.
Pretty chilling, according to Carr. The destruction of all existing governments and religions. Full stop.
How? What was the alleged strategy?
His book outlines a plan to divide populations. Carr uses the controversial term goyim, meaning human cattle, into opposing camps.
On what basis?
Political, racial, social, economic issues, you name it. Then arm these opposing sides, create incidents to spark conflict.
Manufactured conflict.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And crucially, gain control of the press and information agencies to shape public opinion towards their ultimate goal, a one-world government.
And it wasn't just about external manipulation, dividing and conquering from the outside. He talks about infiltration too, right?
Oh, absolutely. A significant internal strategy. The Illuminati were supposedly to use agenter, essentially, operatives.
Like spies or influencers?
Kind of, positioned as experts and specialists behind the scenes in governments. These agents would advise top leaders to adopt policies that, seemed reasonable.
But actually serve the hidden agenda.
Exactly. Over time, serving the one-worlders' secret plans, aiming to destroy the very governments and religions they were pretending to serve.
And how are they organized?
He says they established lodges of the Grand Orient as secret headquarters. Carr really emphasizes that only internationalists, people devoted to this global idea, and those who had, in his words, defected from God, were initiated into the Illuminati within Freemasonry, often using philanthropy as a cover.
So this is where the Rothschild connection becomes really central again, beyond just, funding Weishaupt initially. Carr mentions a specific meeting in Frankfurt.
Yes, he does. Carr alleges that in 1773, Mayer Rothschild, who was only 30 at the time, met with 12 other wealthy, influential men in Frankfurt.
Well, what's the purpose?
To convince them to pool their resources, to finance and control what Rothschild supposedly called the World Revolutionary Movement.
And did he lay out a plan?
Carr says he did, a condensed plot. Rothschild apparently argued that governing people was best done through violence and terrorism, not like academic debates. He allegedly said, right lies and force.
Real stark worldview. What else was in this alleged condensed plot?
It was quite comprehensive, according to Carr. Rothschild supposedly advocated using liberalism as a tool to grab political power.
Interesting twist on liberalism.
Yeah. And he stressed the power of gold, saying capital would end up entirely in our hands no matter who seemed to win any given conflict.
So control the money, control everything.
That's the idea. And crucially, he allegedly justified any and all means to reach the goal. Carr quotes him saying things like great national qualities like frankness and honesty are vices in politics.
Wow. Okay. What else?
Carr details plans to use mob psychology, using catchy slogans like liberty, equality, fraternity to manipulate the masses. The plot also included controlling public information, the media.
Shaping the narrative.
Exactly. And enacting economic warfare, things like high taxes, unfair competition, controlling raw materials, all aimed at the economic ruin of the so-called goyim.
And the end goal of all this economic ruin and manipulation?
The ultimate vision, Carr claims, was a one-world government, not elected, but appointed by a dictator. And this dictator would be selected from a pool of scientists, economists, financiers, industrialists, and millionaires.
The sort of technocratic, plutocratic elite.
You could say that. And chillingly, Carr says the plan included capturing the youth by teaching them theories and principles we know to be false, and twisting existing laws to basically destroy civilization from within.
It's a vast conspiracy he's outlining. And it didn't stop there. He claims they even mapped out future global wars. General Albert Pike comes up here?
Indeed. Pike is a huge figure in Carr's narrative. Carr states that back in 1834, Giuseppe Mazzini was selected to direct the Illuminati's revolutionary program worldwide.
Okay.
Then, Carr claims that between 1859 and 1871, General Albert Pike, supposedly under Mazzini's influence, developed a detailed military blueprint, not for one war, but for 3 world wars and 3 major revolutions.
Wait. 3 world wars planned out in the mid-19th century.
That's the claim. Designed, Carr says, to bring the conspiracy to its final stage during the 20th century.
That's an incredible assertion. How could something like that possibly be coordinated?
Well, according to Carr, Pike organized something called the New and Reformed Palladian Rite. It had supreme councils set up globally, and he claims they used advanced communication methods. Carr specifically notes this was long before Marconi invented wireless radio.
How advanced? He doesn't say.
Not in detail, but he implies some kind of secret, rapid communication network to coordinate what would look like apparently unrelated incidents simultaneously, things that would then escalate into the planned wars or revolutions.
And did he specify the purpose of these planned wars, like World War I?
He did. Carr specifically states the purpose of World War I, according to this alleged blueprint, was to overthrow the czars in Russia, and then establish atheistic communism there. This would be achieved, supposedly, by exploiting differences manufactured between the British and German empires.
Right. Here's where it gets maybe even more interesting or disturbing, depending on your view. Carr alleges this conspiracy wasn't just theoretical. It didn't stay on paper.
No, he claims it manifested directly in some of the most pivotal moments in history, across centuries.
What kind of patterns does he claim to see unfolding?
Carr sees a consistent playbook, basically. He contends that these financial powers repeatedly manipulated royalty, stirred up mass movements, and exploited existing divisions for their own ends.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He points to the English Revolution, 1640 to 1649. He claims international Jewish moneylenders orchestrated King Charles I's execution using Oliver Cromwell as their instrument.
And the goal?
To gain control of England's economy and increase national debts by funding wars they themselves had stirred up. This, Carr says, paved the way for the Bank of England in 1694,
Which he saw as
selling England into economic bondage. By usurping the government's right to issue currency, making loans based on a fraction of gold reserves, and securing repayment of that debt through direct taxation of the people.
And then the French Revolution, just over a century later. Does Carr see the same hand at work?
Absolutely. He asserts the French Revolution was another meticulously planned and financed event carried out by these same international Jewish moneylenders, or perhaps their successors.
How does he claim they did it this time?
He gets quite detailed. He talks about the manipulation of the Duc d'Orléans through massive gambling debts and moral corruption using what the French called l'infamie, basically the scandalous public disgrace.
Okay.
And initiating him into Grand Orient Masonry, allegedly by Weishaupt himself. The Duke's home, the Palais Royal, then became a hub for revolutionary politics, propaganda, and character assassination.
And the Reign of Terror.
Carr paints that as a planned outcome. Systematic mass murders, atrocities committed by figures like Robespierre, Danton, Marat. He even mentions Marie Antoinette's warnings about Freemasonry being ignored as a crucial missed signal.
It's relentless. Carr also dives into America's experience, especially around money and banking.
Yeah.
What's the core idea there? How were financial systems supposedly controlled?
For Carr, controlling a nation's currency is paramount for these secret powers. It's the ultimate lever of control.
How does he connect that to America?
He references Benjamin Franklin, who reportedly observed that prosperity thrived in the American colonies when they issued their own currency, their colonial scrip.
Right.
Franklin apparently said that prosperity ended when England forced them to stop, effectively taking away their monetary independence. Carr links this directly to the economic conditions that led to the American Revolution.
And later events, too.
Yes. He points to things like the 1873 crime of 73. He alleges American silver was deliberately demonetized, basically removed as legal tender through the bribery of U.S. legislators by European bankers, naming Ernest Sade specifically. And then later, the role of Paul Warburg from the investment firm Kuhn-Loeb & Co. in drafting the Federal Reserve System.
Which established America's central bank.
Exactly. For Carr, these weren't just evolving economic policies. They were deliberate steps to centralize financial control in private hands and saddle nations with inescapable debt.
Moving into the 20th century, the Russian revolutions are obviously critical pieces in Carr's puzzle. He sees the secret powers playing a long game there, too.
Oh, absolutely. A very long game. Carr states they provoked the Russo-Japanese War back in 1904 specifically to weaken Tsarist Russia.
Oh.
He makes the claim that the Rothschilds financed the Russian side, while Kuhn-Loeb & Co., led by Jacob Schiff, financed Japan. The goal, he alleges, was to ensure Russia's defeat and foment internal unrest.
And the 1905 revolution.
He describes Bloody Sunday in 1905 as a staged incident deliberately provoked to ignite revolution, even claiming the Tsar wasn't even in the city when soldiers fired on protesters.
So manufactured outrage.
That's his claim. And following the failure of that initial Menshevik uprising, Carr claims Lenin was specifically chosen by these international bankers to lead the Comintern.
The Communist International.
Yes, an organization founded explicitly, Carr says, to promote world revolution. Then, World War I was used as a backdrop by agitators to create more unrest in Russia between 1914 and 1916.
And then comes the pivotal year, 1917.
Right. Carr details the February Revolution, women's demonstrations turning violent, revolutionary leaders allegedly firing into crowds to escalate chaos, the slaughter of police, releasing criminals, and even lunatics from asylums to sow terror.
A complete breakdown of order.
Intentionally engineered, he argues. Then the October Revolution followed, with Lenin rising to become premier. And Carr highlights another figure here, Sverdlov.
Who was he?
Carr calls him a specially trained financial expert and agent of the bankers. Sverdlov, Carr alleges, immediately took control of the Russian economy for them.
And after the revolution.
Carr alleges a subsequent reign of terror, far worse than the French one, with millions slain or sent to forced labor camps. And he makes another stark claim, that many of the original revolutionary leaders were later liquidated by Stalin, specifically at the bankers' behest because they were no longer needed or had become inconvenient.
Goodness. So, according to Carr, even the Great War itself, World War I, and its aftermath, the Treaty of Versailles, were all part of this orchestration.
That's exactly his assertion. He claims the international bankers engineered the replacement of the British Prime Minister Asquith, who was apparently anti-Zionist, in 1916.
Who replaced him?
a coalition government that included Lloyd George and Winston Churchill, both of whom Carr identifies as pro-Zionist and favorable to the bankers' plans.
And he mentions something about Lord Kitchener.
Yes, the mysterious sinking of HMS Hampshire, the ship carrying Lord Kitchener. Kitchener was supposedly on his way to Russia to reorganize their military forces. Carr suggests it was sabotage.
Why?
To prevent Kitchener from shoring up the Tsarist regime, thus allowing the planned revolution and overthrow of the Russian government to proceed.
And the Balfour Declaration in 1917. How does that fit in?
Carr presents it as a quid pro quo, a deal. British support for the Zionist aim of a Jewish homeland in Palestine in exchange for Zionist influence, particularly in America, bringing the U.S. into World War I on Britain's side.
He cites someone on this.
Yes, he quotes Lewis Marshall, a prominent American Jewish leader at the time, supposedly saying, "Zionism is but an incident of a far-reaching plan. It is merely a convenient peg on which to hang a powerful weapon." Carr uses this to argue Zionism itself was a tool for the larger conspiracy.
And the Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, meant to end the war.
But according to Carr, designed to guarantee the next one.
How so?
He alleges that Paul Warburg, the same man involved with the Fed, led the U.S. delegation. His brother, Max Warburg, led the German delegation.
Brothers on opposing sides.
Yes. And Carr claims Jacob Schiff, from Kuhnloeb, essentially dictated the terms to President Wilson, making them deliberately harsh and punitive towards Germany.
Why do that?
Carr states the purpose was to ensure Germany would eventually seek revenge and fight another war against Britain and France. This would further exhaust the European empires, making them ripe for subjugation by the USSR, which Carr claims the bankers controlled via Lenin and later Stalin.
Staggering reinterpretation of major historical events. Moving forward chronologically into the 1930s, Carr also gives significant attention to the Spanish Civil War. How does that fit into his grand conspiracy narrative?
Well, Carr sets the stage by claiming Spain had been infiltrated by moneylenders since the time of Christ, leading eventually to the expulsion of Jews in 1492. Fast forward to the 20th century, he claims Grand Orient Masonic lodges served as HQs for underground revolutionary activity linked with Marxists and anarchists. He then alleges the Spanish elections in 1931 were rigged to ensure a socialist Republican government came to power, paving the way for the next phase.
Which was?
According to Carr, Stalin's Comintern, remember, the organization promoting world revolution plotted to subjugate Spain. But not just for Spain itself. The goal, he claims, was to use the conflict to deliberately foment a total war between Britain and its allies on one side and Germany and its allies on the other, essentially using Spain as the trigger for World War II.
And the execution of this plan in Spain, according to Carr, it involves some horrifying tactics.
Yes, he goes into some grim detail there. He recounts so-called revolutionary orders that were apparently seized in Majorca in 1936.
So what they outline?
Systematic executions of enemies, elimination of military officers who wouldn't cooperate, the deliberate use of starvation as a weapon, and psychological warfare.
Psychological warfare, how it...
Specifically attacking religion, undermining parental authority, and using crime and sex comics to corrupt the youth. He details widespread atrocities. Torture by secret police units called Chekas, a term borrowed from the Soviets, which he says specialized in terror to break the population's will.
And propaganda.
Absolutely. Carr claims there was tight control over the narrative, suppressing any news unfavorable to the communist backside and fabricating lies about atrocities supposedly committed by Franco's nationalist forces.
This all seems to build inevitably in his narrative towards World War II. Another global conflict Carr claims was meticulously manipulated, not just allowed to happen.
Precisely. Carr's book states that Germany was secretly allowed, even helped to rearm by Stalin, completely violating the Treaty of Versailles.
Why would Stalin help Hitler rearm?
To build Germany up into a credible threat, Carr argues. At the same time, he claims intense anti-Semitic hatred was deliberately fomented, not just by Nazis, but manipulated by the secret powers, to divide Europe starkly into fascist and anti-fascist camps, making war inevitable.
But he also suggests Hitler wasn't initially playing their game.
That's a complex part of his narrative. He alleges Hitler initially defied the international bankers by advocating for monetary reform, issuing his own debt-free currency, and challenging the Bank of International Settlements, which Carr saw as a key institution of the bankers.
He also mentions some alleged scandals in Britain.
Yes, the Glass Club scandal in London in 1916, which he claims was used to smear and depose Prime Minister Asquith. And later, he suggests King Edward VIII's abdication in 1936 wasn't just about Wallace Simpson, but was engineered using similar tactics, l'infamie, manufactured scandal, because Edward also opposed the secret powers.
So the war itself wasn't a natural result of tensions, but a calculated push.
Carr asserts Prime Minister Chamberlain was deliberately deceived about Hitler's intentions, and Poland, leading Britain to declare war based on what Carr calls a false ultimatum regarding Poland.
He even suggests Hitler tried to avoid escalating things with Britain early on.
Yes, he points to Hitler ordering the Panzer Corps to halt during the Battle of France in 1940, which prevented the likely destruction of the trapped British forces at Dunkirk. Carr interprets this as Hitler showing he initially desired peace with Britain.
And Churchill's role.
Carr contrasts this with Churchill's policy of unrestricted bombing of German cities, which broke an earlier declaration by both sides. Carr claims Churchill did this deliberately to put the war on a totally destructive basis, removing any chance of a negotiated peace.
And even attempts at peace later were allegedly thwarted.
According to Carr, yes. He discusses Rudolf Hess's bizarre secret flight to Britain in 1941. Carr claims Hess carried a serious peace offer from Hitler, which included a German plan to attack Stalin's Russia.
And Churchill.
Churchill, after consulting with President Roosevelt, allegedly rejected the offer flat out. Then, almost immediately after Germany did invade Russia in June 1941, the US and UK threw their full support behind Stalin.
Which led to Churchill's famous quote.
Right, about being willing to shake hands with the devil if Hitler invaded hell. Carr sees this as proof of the predetermined alignment. And of course, he attributes the financing of World War II itself to astronomical sums, borrowed from these same international bankers, accruing massive interest, all charged to the national debts of the warring nations.
And the post-war world. The conferences at Tehran, Yalta, Potsdam, also shaped by these secret powers.
Carr certainly depicts them that way. He describes the conferences as further manifestations of this ongoing conspiracy. He paints a picture of Stalin's cunning, Roosevelt making huge concessions. Carr claims he handed over 600 million people to communist bondage, and Churchill somewhat reluctantly acquiescing.
He mentions Roosevelt's attitude towards Churchill.
Yes, Carr alleges Roosevelt held Churchill in contempt and actually desired the dissolution of the British Commonwealth.
And finally, the atomic bombs. A really shocking claim there.
Extremely shocking. Carr makes the claim that the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not necessary to defeat Japan, arguing Japan was already militarily defeated and seeking surrender terms.
So why drop them, according to Carr?
He claims it was a brutal demonstration, a warning aimed squarely at Stalin, signaling the West's newfound power and cautioning him against defying the Western internationalists who, Carr implies, ultimately controlled both sides, which really raises a crucial question. What does this incredibly elaborate, detailed narrative actually mean for Carr beyond just, recounting historical events?
Right. It seems he connects it all to something much bigger.
He absolutely does. He positions these centuries of conflict and intrigue within a much larger, almost cosmic battle.
It's not just about political power, then, or economic control. It's deeper, more spiritual for him.
That's exactly it. Carr's core belief underpinning the entire book is that the struggle isn't merely temporal, earthly. He believes it originated in the celestial world.
A Luciferian conspiracy, he calls it.
Yes. Where Satan, whom he describes as an indestructible, pure spirit, is constantly working to drag human souls into hell. And the primary method, inoculating them with atheistic materialism.
And things like communism and Nazism?
He portrays them as tools, as atheistic, totalitarian-minded groups, used consciously as pawns in the game by the real players, the high priests of Satanism, as he puts it, to achieve global control. And it's really critical to note here, Carr makes a specific point, though it's wrapped in controversial historical theories, that the secret power isn't concerned about the welfare of all Jews, or all Gentiles for that matter. He claims many directors of the WRM World Revolutionary Movement are men who descended from the Khazars.
The Khazars being?
A historically Turkic people from Central Asia, a significant portion of whom converted to Judaism centuries ago. Carr uses this Khazar theory, which is itself highly debated and sometimes used in anti-Semitic contexts, to argue that the conspiracy's leaders are non-Semitic races who adopted Judaism for selfish political purposes.
So he's trying to distinguish between Jewish people generally and this specific group, he claims, leads the conspiracy.
He is attempting that distinction, yes. But again, we have to emphasize our role here is just to report what Carr states in his book, acknowledging the extremely controversial nature of these specific claims and the historical baggage such theories carry.
Understood. So for Carr, understanding this whole alleged conspiracy is absolutely crucial for fighting back against it. What solutions does he actually propose? Does he offer any way out?
He does offer several solutions, yeah. They fall into a few categories. First and foremost, monetary reform.
Getting back to the money.
Always back to the money for Carr.
Yeah.
He emphasizes ending what he calls usury charging exorbitant interest on loans, basically, and returning the power to create and issue money back to sovereign governments, away from private bankers. This, for him, strikes right at the heart of the international bankers' power.
Okay, what else?
Secondly, he calls for transparent diplomacy. Absolutely no secret meetings, no backroom deals, or hidden negotiations in government. He believes secrecy is what allows these conspirators to operate unchallenged. Everything out in the open.
Makes sense if you believe there's a hidden hand. And beyond the financial and political, he talks about a more societal, maybe even spiritual approach.
Yes, very much so. His third main solution is he terms a Christian crusade.
A crusade, what does that entail?
He envisions Christian denominations uniting, not for war, but to actively educate the public about the dangers of atheistic materialistic ideologies like communism, also to protect youth from being corrupted by false teachings, and to positively engage with people who've been deceived by these ideologies, trying to bring them back, so to speak.
And any others?
Finally, he touches on internal security. He suggests organizing civil defense not just for natural disasters, but as a potential counter-revolutionary organization to guard against subversive fifth columns, hidden enemies within countries like Canada and the U.S. But he couples this with a call for brotherly love and sharing, advocating for a more equitable distribution of necessities and sharing wealth beyond basic requirements within society.
So what does this all mean for us listening today? We've just navigated William Guy Carr's truly panoramic and deeply controversial view of history. It's a narrative where powerful, unseen hands are supposedly constantly moving the pieces on a global chessboard. It's certainly a challenging perspective to even consider.
It really is. Carr presents a world where even the most significant events, revolutions, world wars, economic crises, aren't random. They're meticulously planned, part of a centuries-long plot. He urges us, to try and understand these alleged patterns, not just as something that happened in the past, but as a blueprint for ongoing dangers. A hidden agenda he believed was and is continuing to unfold.
Right. Whether you agree with Carr's conclusions, his interpretations, or frankly even his premises, or not, his work definitely forces you to pause and consider. How much of what we perceive as just spontaneous history, as things just happening, might actually be the result of deliberate, long-term strategizing by unseen groups?
It's a provocative question.
It is, and perhaps even more unsettlingly, if that were the case, even partly, what narratives are we being told today that might be shaping a future we don't yet fully see? Something to think about.